Okay, first thing we're going to look at is Blank Night, which was the envelope thing. As you can see, we're not in the little pokey little hole with the hot, stupid lights and sweating and stuff. I embarrassed Peter Nardi so much. He's brought me here to his house. Thank you, Peter.
That's okay.
As you can see, it's his birthday. We've still got the candles here. Obviously, not all of them. They're all around the house. Thousands of them. Celebrating. His millionth dollar made off me and other close-up performers who do DVDs.
We have got the Archer wing, which I'll show you, newly added to the premises.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Every now and again, he will just bring the comedy level down just to make me look funnier. That's why I've got him, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, so the first thing we're going to look at, thanks for that.
That's all right, mate.
That. He didn't know he was going to be on camera, that's why he hasn't had a shave, he's wearing jeans, he's scruffy. He would have gone on a diet, everything would have changed if he'd known this was going to happen. But like I said, Blank Night was the first thing I did, was the bank night routine. The reason I call it Blank Night is because hopefully there's nothing to see. If you watched it, hopefully you wouldn't have seen the method. I wanted to do a blank night routine. I'll talk to you. Is that all right?
Speak to me. Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you sure?
Yeah.
Didn't really want to, but I wanted to do a blank night or a bank night routine that looked very, very fair. And I was sort of inspired to do a routine using words on envelopes initially because I saw Sean Taylor do his version, which is in Mind Busters or Mind Blasters. Is it Mind Blasters? His book. Yeah. Mind Blasters. Sean Taylor. I think he's sold out now, but he'll do a reprint just for you. And he had an effect based on advertising, and he had some words and pictures, and he had a different coloured envelope, a picture of a flower, and then some words. I think he had sex on one of them, money, I think, was on one of them. I can't remember exactly, but he used the words, and I thought that's a nice premise for doing a trick, having words on. But I wanted to produce the money cleanly out of the envelope. I didn't want to take it out of a thumb tip. In fact, originally I was working on a routine for a tour I was doing, and originally I was just going to take it out of a thumb tip. I just thought I'll just do the routine. It'll all be about the funny words, and I'll work out what I'm going to do presentation wise, and then I'll just take the money out of a thumb tip. And I was talking to Pete Furman on the phone like that, because that's how you talk to people on the phone. And it wasn't an iPhone, because I wouldn't have heard him. And I was chatting to him and about the routine. He said, that sounds great. He said, how are you producing the money? I said, I'm just going to take it out of a thumb tip. And he went, are you happy taking it out of a thumb tip, mate? And
it just looks weird.
Yeah. But the thing is, he said, are you happy taking it out of a thumb tip? And I went, yeah, it'll be fine. The audience won't care. They won't know. And I sort of hung up. And of course, he just had to ask that question. Sometimes you just need somebody to ask the awkward questions, don't you? And just by him asking that question, I thought, actually, I'm not really that happy. Because in truth, it doesn't quite make sense. It doesn't make sense, especially if you've got big envelopes. Yeah, if you've got a tiny envelope, then you would have fold the note up to put it in a tiny envelope. But if you've got big envelopes, and I wanted this to be a stage routine, not a close-up routine, it doesn't make sense to have a tiny folded up note. So I thought, right, I want to be able to take the note, fully out. And then I thought, wouldn't it be great if you had more than one note in there?
Yeah.
It just seems like to manipulate one note might be possible, but to manipulate a bundle of notes seems more difficult. And with this method, you could have, if you wanted to, you have 10 £20 notes or 10 $50 bills or whatever you want to have in it. And so I just played around with envelopes, and this is the method that I came up with. And basically it just uses like a gimmicked pocket that I've made up, and this is how the whole thing's done. This is basically just holds the money, and it holds it out at the back for you until you need to produce it from the final envelope.
And this is just made out.
Yeah, I'll explain how to make it. You need a specific type of envelope. These in the UK are called DL, I think is the name for them.
Sort of standard letter envelope.
Yeah, standard letter envelope. But you don't want the ones with like the triangular flap.
Right.
You want ones with a straight flap like this. It's quite handy if they have quite what I sort of tight seams like this rather than seams like that.
Yeah.
Coming up on each edge. That doesn't really matter, but it just means that when you make the gimmick, the lines line up. But like I said, it doesn't really matter because in stage nobody sees that really. Yeah. And then to make the gimmick, what you're going to do is you get one of these envelopes, and you're basically going to cut this section out of the envelope like this. These envelopes have actually been trimmed down here. I'll explain that in a moment. Okay. So normally the envelope would come up to here. So when you remove this section, you end up with a pocket like that, except it's the same length on either side. It's it's not held back here. So once you've cut it out, it's open at this end and open at this end because you've cut it. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And each half is the same length, and then you trim that's about half an inch, a centimetre, a bit more, off one edge. So
Yeah,
so you've got
get the notes,
so that when you get the notes, you can reach them with your fingertips.
Perfect.
And then you glue it together on this side so that it becomes a pocket, because originally it'll be just like a folded up two flaps.
Yeah.
And you round these corners off, because when you actually cut it out of the envelope, the corners will be sharp edged. So you round them off. And that's your gimmick made. There's something else you need to do with the gimmick. I'll explain that in a second. So that's the first thing you do, is make the gimmick.
Okay.
Second thing you need to do is, with each envelope, you then need to trim about the same amount off, about a centimetre of this part of the envelope. Okay?
Yeah.
The reason for that is when this gimmick is actually held in place here, if you don't trim that down, when you go in, this can get in the way.
Yeah, you want to.
So you want to be able to access these. So
Yeah.
so when it's lined up, you access the money.
Okay, so
rather than this.
that's never getting loaded inside.
No, this never goes into the envelope. I'll run through the handling in a second.
Yeah.
So basically, you want 5 envelopes that have had a centimetre trimmed off here.
Yeah.
Just to make them the pocket a little bit shallower, and then you need your gimmick made up. There's a PDF that's going to be with the DVD, and that's got all illustrations showing you exactly how to make it up. So if this doesn't make sense, look at the PDF, and it'll all make sense. Then the one other thing you need to do before you do your performance is along this edge, which, as you look at the open pocket side, is the left hand side here, or as you held it face down, it's on the right hand side underneath. You're going to apply some repositional glue. Now, there's 2 types of repositional glue I've come across. The first one that sort of got me interested in sort of repositional glue stuff is this stuff called Zig two-way glue. I first came upon this, Anthony Owen brought Sticky Blue Book, and I think he's got the Sticky Blue Book 2 now, which has got routines just using this repositional glue. And basically it's a glue that you can apply, and it stays sticky. It's like post-it note glue.
Yeah, I mean, if you stick something to it straight away, it will work as normal glue. If you let it dry off, it just becomes like a tacky.
Yeah. Well, with this one, the two-way glue, when you put it on, it's actually blue.
Yeah,
and when it dries clear. The other one I found, which is made by Bostik, and that's Bostik stick pen or sticky pen. And you can get these from Smith's. These are slightly harder to get hold of. I know that TV Magic sell them, don't they?
Yeah.
And various places sell them, and some craft shops have them at various places. You can get hold of that. Smith's in the UK sell this. I'm not sure, where else you'd get them in abroad or in America or whatever.
There is also a. Trying to think who it is. The people that do the mouse, like Tipex, but it's not Tipex. It's another company. They do like a roll-on two-way repositional stick thing.
Now and again, it just doesn't make any sense at all, ladies and gentlemen.
It could be helpful if you know what I'm
now
talking about.
Now and again, he's clueless. There's a company that's not Mouse that makes something that rolls on.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
It's red.
It's red. Well, you can get this or you can get this, and then there's a red thing, apparently, that you can get. He's got a lovely house, ladies and gentlemen, but slightly special. So anyway, what you need to do is you get one of these glues, and you're going to apply it to this side and let it dry, and then that's tacky, and it's not tacky that it's going to stick permanently, but it's tacky enough that it will stick to paper and stay there. And you apply that to one side, let it dry and stay tacky, and then you set the envelopes up. Now I had the envelopes set up in the order that I'm going to show them to the audience, which is something, nothing, mine, sorry, yours, mine, and sex. And they're set up sort of with the first one on the top and sex on the bottom. And the gimmick goes underneath the flap of the first envelope, like this. And basically, it's going to stay there until I need to move it. If nobody picks the something envelope, that's the perfect scenario.
Right, okay.
It just stays there the whole way through. And the nice thing about this is you can handle it quite fairly. Because it's under the flap there, you you can handle it. You can swap hands. You can just grip it down here. You can show them
there's-
fairly.
There's no fear of the tacky stuff sticking to this.
No, well, you don't want to have it so sticky that it will stick to everything.
Right. Okay.
What I normally do is I mean, you need to get the glue and play with it yourself
Yeah,
to
of
see.
course.
I apply some glue, and then with my finger, once it's dry, I just dab it a bit. Even if it feels too sticky, it's just a feel. You get
Yeah,
to know
yeah.
what's the right amount.
But you want to be able to move it.
You want to be
and
able to move
stick
it.
when
But the
you
thing
need
is,
to.
when you're handling the envelopes, just don't grip it down near the bottom here. Otherwise, it will stick there.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can pull it off if needs be.
Yeah.
But I never grip it down near the bottom. I normally hold it by the middle. When I'm showing the envelopes, I'm showing like this. The nice thing is, you can even, when the envelopes together, you can even flash the backs.
Yeah.
Because in a stage situation, nobody's going to notice. It just looks like another envelope, in amongst everything. So you can relax, you can handle them quite casually. I mean, the first time I started performing this, to be honest, I was holding them like this, and John Lovick, I performed at the Magic Castle for a while, and John Lovick sort of, really helped me with just sort of relaxing with the handling, and I changed the handle a little bit, and then I performed it in the UK when I came back from the castle a few times. Ben Earl sort of gave me even more advice just about, even being more relaxed. And the truth is, you can be very relaxed with these. You can flash front and back. You can, you don't have to worry about anything really. No, there's nothing really to see. The only bad angles are right at the sides when you get down to the last couple of envelopes.
Yeah, and you've got to move.
And that's
stuff
when you've got to move stuff. So what you're going to do is you show the envelopes and you do the routine. I mean, if you do my routine, you can use it as it is. I sort of wing that a little bit. I know roughly what I'm going to say, but quite often I'll just go all over the place, just playing around with the words and something, nothing, blah blah blah, and yours and mine and sex. You could use any words you like on these. I mean, you could be, if it was a corporate, you could use words that had something to do with the company. You could have different things. You can have pictures. You can have anything you like on the envelopes really to make it a routine of your own. The something and the nothing idea was something that Wayne Dobson gave me. I did it at the Magic Circle Christmas show, and I didn't have something and nothing at that time. And he suggested something and nothing for the gag, where when somebody takes something, you sort of say, would you like to swap it for nothing? It's not often you get the chance to get something for nothing, or vice versa. In the end, in my routine, I didn't use that gag because it just didn't. It seemed to slightly slow down the pace doing that gag. So I don't use it in my presentation, but I still like the idea of it's something. There's something written on it, but it's not something. It's something else. And, so that's why I still went with something or nothing.
Yeah.
Obviously, when they choose an envelope, if they choose any envelope other than something, it's not a problem. You can just take the envelope out and give them it. So, if they take nothing, that's fine. You give them it. Inside the envelopes, you'll notice I had those John Archer $0 bills.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've got one in here. There's probably one in somewhere.
There was one in one.
There was. There it is. I think it's important to have something in the other envelopes rather than nothing. I'm very careful about, in the routine, that I don't say somebody's going to win my money. I actually say my job is to try and make sure that I keep my money.
Yeah.
So it doesn't become a thing of, here's a game where you can try and win the money. It's a game of, I'm going to try and make sure you don't win my money.
Yeah.
And it's a very subtle difference, but I think it's less of a challenge. And the other thing is, I do think it's good to have something in the envelope that they receive, so they still get something. And even though this is, I mean, it's nothing, I do just, stacking them on my printer and just cut them up with a guillotine, and they're just silly little John Archer $0 bills that I've made. People do like these, and quite often after the show, people will come up and say, will you sign it for me? And people.
Well, it's a memento.
It's a memento, yeah. And it's, even though it's it's perceived value, it's just the fact that they took part and they got this thing. And so I think it's important to have something in the envelopes, and there'll be, like I say, one of them in every envelope. So if they choose an envelope that doesn't have the gimmick behind it, in other words, if they choose anything other than something at this point, I can give them that. They can open it up, take the $0 bill out. If they choose something, what I need to do is I need to keep that gimmick behind as I give them something. And it's very easy to do. All I'm going to do is, obviously I'm holding them in this position so that they can't see this. But all that happens is I take something and I give them it. And all I have to do is slide that gimmick behind the other envelopes.
Yeah.
And the hardest time to do this is when there's only two left, and that's what happened on the performance. When I did the performance, it got down to something and sex, and the guy chose something, and I had to do the switch at the end, and that's the worst time to have to do it, but it's still covered. So I just, if they choose something at another point, this gets slid back and they get given this envelope. Now I could just leave this behind. I could just leave it, to ride behind the other envelopes like this. But the problem with that is I become less free.
Yeah.
I can't do this as easily. So I quite like to then just ride it back under the flap of the next one that's at the back.
Yeah.
And you can, you could slide it behind anyway. I just slide the top one back as I'm displaying the envelopes again.
I mean, it's a standard bank night move. To be fair, just to move a billet behind is something that if you've done bank night before, you should be quite used to.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't seal the envelopes shut, people have said, shouldn't the envelopes be sealed? Because you're getting, several banknotes in there, I don't think they need to be sealed.
No.
It just slows the process, it slows the procedure up, and also, you couldn't see the fact that it's not sealed doesn't make it any easier to get them in.
No, that's right.
So you're just going to slide it back, and it remains behind the flap until you're left with two envelopes. Now, when you've got two, I didn't actually do it in performance. What I'll quite often do is I'll get to the last person. I'll say, okay, we've got two left. We've got yours, and we've got mine. And I'll say, you've already made your decision, aren't you? You're going to go for mine. Now, they'll either say yes. I didn't do this in performance. I don't know why. It's just sometimes I just change things around as I'm performing because I'm daft. But if they say yes, I go, great, take it. And if they say no, I say, oh, aren't you? And then I relax.
Yeah.
And I can then do the switch and say, okay.
But what you sorry, it's just a thought that's come to my head here. But when you're holding these like that, couldn't this one now come underneath? So you're in perfect position to either pull away with this or pull away with that. It
could do. The only reason it could, you could do that. It does make sense. The only reason I don't do that is it's different to what I've done throughout the rest of the routine. So to suddenly do something different seems wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've always been holding them in this format, so that this one's at the front. So to suddenly put this one at the back, for me, seems to look like there's a switch going on. So what I would rather do, and it isn't a problem. You just come back to that position and just slide that one back. It's exactly the same move. You just got to be a bit more accurate. You've got to be more accurate with pulling them apart because you've only got one envelope to hide this apart. But it's not difficult because when you make this gimmick up, as it says on the PDF, it's slightly narrower than the width of the envelope.
You should be able to hide.
So you've got a bit of leeway up and down. So what I did on the night is, he chose something. I think it was the envelope in my right hand. And I went, everybody else has had the chance to change their mind. Hasn't had the chance to change their mind, but I'm going to give you the chance to change your mind. Do you want to change your mind? And at that point, he says, he says no, and I go, all right, and then I can give him. But the main thing was, I was in early performances holding them like this at the end and saying, right, I've got two envelopes left. Which one do you want? And then going to that move. But as it was Geoffrey Durham who said to me, I think, and Pete as well, who saw an early performance of it, when I get down to the last two, you really do want to be in that position. That's the way it should look for the last two. You shouldn't have the last two in one hand. It's almost like that's how you would offer a choice of two. Most of the time, in fairness, people go for the one in my left hand. I think because the read from left to right, the first one they see they don't want to go for. So most time people will go for the one in my left hand. But if not, I'm just going to bring them together and say, look, I'm going to give you the chance to change your mind. Nobody else did. Are you sure? And then switch it. So I'm now left in this position. Now I'm either left in that position with the gimmick over the top of the flap if they've if I had to do the switch on the last one, it will be over the flap. Or if I haven't had to do the switch, It'll be under the flap. It doesn't matter. Either way, what's going to happen is, as the last one's been opened, I take this into this position, and what's going to happen, I'm holding it up like this, in that position, but what's going to happen is, I'm going to just slide this gimmick down so that it aligns with the fingers there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I just hold my little fingers at the bottom as stops, and just let the gimmick sort of drop into place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can guide it across if I need to. It doesn't really matter how central it is. It just needs to drop, and like I say, these little fingers act as guides, and it drops. And then with this thumb, I just stick it down on this side.
Right. Cool.
I have played around with having glue on this side, but you don't need glue on this side, as you see, because what's going to happen is, when I open the envelope, these two fingers are going to grip here.
Yeah.
And the envelope's going to be open. Now, if the flap is under, as it is now, that's going to happen as I open up the envelope, which looks, looks fair. But it sort of happens as I'm bringing the envelope down. I open up the flap, and then I'm going to reach in and take the money out. And I mean, that looks like, to all intents and purposes, from a stage position, that looks like the money's coming cleanly out of the
even
envelope.
from this position, it looks like it's coming out.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
It works, and it can work with different size envelopes and different situations.
And the thing is, that final move, when you're doing the alignment, remember, you are giving the envelope out to the audience, so they're still busy looking at that. So.
Yeah. And also, what's happening is, literally, the last envelope's gone here. You bring it down, you say, okay, open that envelope, and you just casually, it just almost drops into place. You just got to make sure your fingers are there so it can't fall out.
Yeah.
It can't go anywhere. And then when you're happy, you just squeeze it. And then I do the squeeze a little bit more, as I say. You could have chosen any envelope. You could have it yours or mine or sex or whatever, blah blah blah. But the envelope you left me was mine in this case. Thank you very much. The only envelope with £60. And of course, there's a little bit of laugh at that end, and I say, no, really. And then I just drop it down, open it up, reach inside and take the money.
And that's clean. And you're absolutely right. Taking the notes out flat throws you off. Even, to a lay person, it's going to look great anyway, but to a magician, that is the faller, that the money's coming out flat, because everyone would expect this folded up little bundle of notes coming out.
It is very, very clean, and it looks. The reason I call it blank night is there's nothing to see. It looks like it should look.
Yeah.
It looks like, if you had a load of money in an envelope and you took it out, that's how if somebody said, put this in an envelope and keep it for me, that's how you'd put it in an envelope. You wouldn't have it, you wouldn't have it folded up or anything really, not even like that. And it's great. And you can take more than this. You really can have quite a stack of bills in there to take out if you wanted to.
But you had a nice line about having the £60 where it's,
Yeah, a lot of people have said to me, why didn't you put £100 in, or why not just... And it is. It's pointless conversation. You put in an amount of money that feels right to you. I think if you have too much money in the envelope, it can get a little bit like you're rubbing their nose in it.
Yeah.
You've got all this money and they can't have it. And whereas if it's just £20, I think it's nice to have several notes to come out. And £60 works for me. But if you want to do it with $10,000 bills or whatever, you can do it with whatever works for you. The nice thing about this is actually, if you're creative with it, there are a lot of other things you can do with it. You could use this idea to load a prediction into an envelope. So you could have an envelope with a prediction and have this thing on, and then all you need to do is add this to your envelope as you pick it up, and then you can open up your envelope, which could have been signed by anybody, and you can take out a prediction. And I think there's a lot of possible uses of using this to add things to a secret, to an envelope, so that you can add stuff in. But that's blank now. Any questions, Peter?
No, I think you've explained it all. It's really cool. I like
Excellent.
it. Great.
Thank you very much.